Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Independent Author Podcast. I'm Tom Kranz, your host. My guest today is Dr. Tonya Nagle. She's a PhD and college professor, writer, and we're going to find out a little bit more about both of those. She has a podcast in which she interviews independent writers, or maybe they're not independent. We'll find out in a minute. But in scrolling through the podcast episodes, Tonya, it seems like you kind of specialize in that podcast in talking to authors. First of all, hello, and how are you today?
I'm good. Hello. Thank you for having me.
You came to me and said, let's be on each other's podcasts. And I said, that's a great idea. So tell me a little bit about, so you've got a doctor, that's a PhD. Tell me what that's in and what your, kind of what your the concentration is that you studied in and learned about.
So my doctorate is in higher education administration. And essentially what I studied and learned about was how to handle the roles of a dean, a division chair, someone in the office section of a university management, and which is why I don't do any of that.
Well, thank God you have a PhD in that, since you're not doing it. So I'm guessing, like many people who go up in higher education, your calling was in something maybe not exactly in that subject matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And my graduate degrees, I have a graduate degree in education with a specialization in curriculum and instruction. I have another master's in English and a master's in creative writing. And my point in getting the doctorate in higher education administration is that I thought in someday that I'd want to be, a division chair or, a dean or handle all of those things. And what I found out shortly after getting an opportunity to do that at a university is that, no, I really just want to be in the classroom with my students.
Well, but you seem like you're still young enough that somewhere down the road, you might change your mind and decide you want to be a boss lady after all. And in that case, you've got the right credentials, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, no, right now, my full-time gig right now is I do curriculum and instruction for the Department of Homeland Security. So it's nice. I do get to, still kind of interact with adults, and I'm a Marine Corps veteran, so I still get to do some stuff with the military. So it's been fun. And then I adjunct occasionally as people who've known me through the years and through, the moves and whatnot, reach out and will say like, hey, I've got a class, can you teach it? And then if I've got, the time or inclination, then I do that. And then I coach writing at another university. So I still have my foot in that higher education pool, but I don't want to be in charge of anyone.
Yeah, there are downsides to that. I've been there too, but it's a great credential to have. And hey, I'd hire you to be my creative coach if it ever came to that. So I'm guessing you've been writing for a really long time.
I have. I grew up poor and with a dysfunctional family, and writing was something that allowed me to escape. So even when I was a kid, I remember, elementary school getting, awards for stories and stuff that I would put together. And I remember in high school getting in school suspension for a story that I put together. And my English teacher did not appreciate it the same way that I did. And then it's always been my way to control an environment, to exercise some demons, to just process life. And yeah, at some point I was like, I think I'm going to, see if I can't get something published. And that took about a year. And back then there were, different groups and organizations that you could join. And then, I found a couple of writers that, lived in the area I was in at the time. And we just kind of pushed each other. And eventually I got picked up by a small press that's, because the publishing industry has gone through such a wave of things. Sure. Like they're no longer in existence, which is, kind of sad, but they were the ones that gave me my first shot. So
That's great. So you mentioned a dysfunctional home life, I guess, when you were younger. I've interviewed a number of authors who have the same kind of story. There was some going on in their lives that wasn't right, or there was abuse, or there was. I spoke with one author who has something called chronic anxiety syndrome. She feels anxiety all the time, and this goes back to a home life that wasn't great, and school where she was bullied and all this stuff. And writing was like her outlet. It was where she could express all kinds of things. It's kind of where she lived in that, if you will, in a parallel universe. So is that the same for you, would you say?
I would say absolutely. I have to sometimes watch myself, especially since we've like my husband retired from the Marine Corps and we moved up here and we live in the mountains in a cabin in the woods. So during the time that we were transitioning and I didn't have a full-time job and I didn't have a part-time job, it was extremely easy for me to just completely get sucked into my fiction and spend 8, 9, 10 hours a day in my own world.
Wow.
So I had to kind of.
I wish I had that kind of discipline.
Oh my God. Well, but it wasn't, right. Like it's just the escape of it. And at some point my wrists were, they were like, oh no, we're going to stop doing that right now. So, and then I started to realize what I was doing. And it was like, okay, no, you gotta pull out. We're going to start putting in more applications and then we're going to, get back out there into the world as much as you can.
You're so prolific. You're especially under the Kara North name. You've got so many books that you've written. Do you consider an audience when you're writing, or do you just write what's here and it comes out? And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, too bad.
Most of the time it is that, like, I write for my own entertainment, and then if it finds an audience, that's awesome. There are some, box sets or collections or things that I sign on to do where they have parameters, and they have, either a shared world or a guideline of it has to be within this many words, it has to be within this trope, that kind of stuff. And I sign on for those because that's good for me as an author to have, to have those deadlines, to have those parameters, to stretch my chops if I'm going to write something new that I don't normally write. So I do try to do some of those. And then most of the time though, it's just whatever I want to write. It's whatever's coming out. Sometimes I don't even know that I want to write what I'm writing, but that's what's coming. So
gotcha. Are you writing anything right now? Or what's your most recent thing that you have written, or both?
So I guess like the most recent thing that's been through edits, that's about to, the most recent release is what I wrote that's released right now, in December. And that is the Holly Jolly Rom-Com,
oh yeah,
anthology. And that was one of those, here's a word count, here's a theme, here's a situation, make it happen, kind of thing. And then I'm a part of the Rituals and Runes box set that'll be out next October. And so I've worked through probably about 75% of that story, and it has some basic parameters for what it had to be going into it.
Gotcha. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and then just like for myself on the side kind of things that I've been writing, is in my September North, my young adult, the Drummond series. They're like Gen 2, so that whole family just kind of got away from me into a monster series.
The Holly Jolly rom-com. That's an anthology. That's multiple authors have contributed short stories to that. Mm-hmm. How do you find those authors, or are they assigned to you, or how does that work?
So there are a couple Facebook groups. I'm in Margot's box set. That's what it's called. So if you're looking for it out there, and it's primarily romance that's in there, but occasionally somebody will pop in a different genre, and I'm sure that there are groups for different genres, and it's essentially people kind of go in and will say, I'm thinking about writing something like this. Would anyone else be interested? And then gauged on the interest level, we, say yes or no. And then you get accepted to the group or you don't. The set leaders get to, of course, pick and choose based on, who's going to vibe, with that group, because it is a collaborative effort and you are promoting together. And it would be very easy for someone to kind of slide on and be like, look at this. I got 19 other people who's about to do my marketing. But you don't want to be that person, because then you're never getting on another set.
Gotcha. So when you deal with a lot of authors like that, do you edit their stuff as well? I mean, are you editing this collection more or less, or no?
No, and so this one is not my set. This one is one that I'm participating on.
Okay.
I do offer for any set that I run, and I have established like a couple. I do offer to edit for a reduced, editing fee.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, as indie authors, you have to pay to get it, edited by an editor before sending the final into the set. And then the set leader is responsible for kind of going through there to make sure that you have in fact done that.
Got it. I'll be back with more with Dr. Tonya Nagle right after this.
We failed to halt the Earth's slow death due to climate change and environmental apathy. The planet's temperature rose 7 degrees, causing epic storms, fires, droughts, and tides that ate away at our shores. Now in the year 2212, food is manufactured. Coffee and cars are illegal. The people who are left live in cubes, and the Earth is covered with bubbling lakes of a black, toxic brew. Two 23rd century rebels find a way to travel back in time to our century to stop the poisoning in its tracks and the arrogance that made it possible. Their mission is complicated by fear among their 21st century hosts and the murderous ways of one of the rebels. Read Time Travel Rescue, the sci-fi adventure called unique and original by Publishers Weekly. Time Travel Rescue by Tom Kranz, available on Amazon.
So you mentioned that your full-time job is with the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
So we're talking full-time, 40-hour a week, like, an adult real job, right?
Yes.
So where do you find time to do everything else?
Weekends, pretty much. So it's one of the reasons why I haven't picked up adjunct teaching is because I've put a lot more energy and effort into my writing this past year. And that's kind of taken over that adjunct, faculty type job. So I only do that, occasionally if somebody's really in a pinch and needs me to. And I only do the coaching 3 nights a week. It's just, it's part-time, but it helps to keep me, motivated.
Sure.
And then, so my weekends are pretty much, I call it social media Saturday and Sunday. And aside from that, I couldn't tell you what's been coming out on movies, Netflix, like any of these things, because I have the choice of either watching this or writing. What I generally do, especially if I need like something in the background, is I'll throw on The Office and write.
With The Office in the background, huh?
With The Office in the background.
Of all things to have in the background, that's like, I mean, you have to actually pay attention to that show. So,
and I've watched it so many times.
I never, my wife, all these people are telling me I never got into that show. I guess I always had Steve Carell kind of pigeonholed as this one guy, and I just never bought him in that role. I don't know, but that's interesting that you write with the TV on, because I do too. I write with my laptop, literally on my lap in my den, watching Seinfeld reruns, or sometimes my wife is watching something and I actually can tune it out.
Yeah.
She'll say, "Did you see what that guy just said on TV?" And I'm completely oblivious.
It's like, no. Mm-mm. Yeah, I think sometimes I'll do that just to give me that, I wouldn't say like that coffee shop feel, but that work environment sort of feel. And the worst thing is, like, I guess The Office is because it is a work environment primarily there. And when I was working on site, for full-time jobs, you've always got other people, around you. And I would write during breaks and you steal time as a writer.
Yeah.
And, I never go someplace where I'm like dormant. If I have to wait somewhere, I'm probably like writing something up on an email to send to myself to put in a book later.
Hmm.
It's just
Interesting. So, do you have children running around who distract you?
I have a husband, which
Okay,
is
that's a distraction. Yeah,
so
I
it's
got you.
kind of like a child sometimes.
All right, I'm not going to tell him you said that, and we won't let him listen to this podcast either. It's all right. So, your website is creative writing with drnagle.com, and doctor is dr, so it's creative writing with drnagle nagle.com, and I'll put a link to this in the transcript of this on my podcast site. This is kind of like the one-stop shopping place for everything
All
you're
of it.
doing and involved in at this point, correct?
Yes, which is why it has like that horribly long website name, is because at some point I was like, you know what, you just have to commit to all of this. And there's no other way to do that than to just throw your whole name out there. And,
but people who care are going to save it, and they'll generate a link, and they're never going to have to recite the name again. So
yeah.
I understand. My website is tomcransbooks.com, and people routinely misspell Crans. They want to put a T in there. I only wish I was related to Judith Crans, but I'm not. Your podcast is there's a lot of episodes on here, and you interview people, authors and such. How long have you been doing that?
Since probably about 6 months after we moved to the mountains. So I think I'm going on my second year of having a podcast. And when I started, I just kind of started because not only like moving remotely where I'm an hour away from McDonald's.
That's actually a good thing, I think.
It is in a lot of ways, especially for me. But it's like being away from civilization and then, not having any of that stuff. Like I kind of went through that isolation pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, and then all these other people were having like these isolation issues. And I was like, I wonder, if I could just talk to some people. And then through doing a couple of just regular Zoom meetings with authors, I was like, maybe I should just record this and share it with other people, because we're talking about, the writing. And I wanted to do something that would help other writers. But I also know that my way isn't the way for everyone. And then the only way to get that kind of information out there is to find other writers, to talk to. Like I don't write horror. So interviewing, Dr. Elaine Pascal, who does write horror, was beneficial for those listeners out there who do,
Yeah. That you started your podcast for a lot of the same reasons I did. The independent author pool out there is massive. And as I'm sure you've known, I've read a lot of stuff by independent authors, and, some of it sucks because it doesn't take much to call yourself an author. And then some of it's really great. And there's this whole huge area in between that's kind of like somewhere. There's authors who are either on their way up or on their way down, I guess is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And, for many of us can't afford a $3,000 editor. So we find ways to self-edit, all that stuff. And so I thought it was a good thing to give a forum to people like me. And, it's been good. I've learned a lot from, some other people out there, and it's amazing. So probably one of my favorite interviews is this guy who became an expert on Coca-Cola, of all things. He visited a Coca-Cola museum somewhere in the South, and now he's written 2 books. I forget the name of it, but he's a really interesting guy. He did something else for a living, and he sells these books like in the 50s and 100s to local stores in any place where there's a Coke plant. It's like, wow. And he does it out of his bedroom. He's got piles of books in his bedroom.
Right.
He has, he does everything. I love that. That's just amazing. So the other part of this is to give authors an opportunity to plug something or promote something that they're working on now. What is it that you would like people to know about right now about you or what you're working on now to tell the world?
So I think like right now it would be the young adult Written in the Stars anthology. There are 16 published young adult authors that put together this collection. It ends on January 31st. It is the first book in in a series. Like there's contemporary in there, there's paranormal in there, there's fantasy in there. It's like a series starter collection.
That's written in the stars, you said, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at that on your website now. Okay. So this cover that's on the website, that's what the cover's going to be?
Yes. Yeah.
So I can swipe that.
And it's
use that?
available wide.
So it's available now.
Yes.
Cool. And it's on Amazon, and I see it's right here. It's on all the usual places. Cool. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking this time. And as I said, I'm going to plug your website and your book in the transcript to this podcast. And I also do a blog version, a little written story to kind of whet people's appetites. Dr. Tonya Nagle, it was a pleasure meeting you, and I'll be reading you soon. And have a great rest of the year and a good holiday.
Thank you.